So Patty, a really interesting conversation today with Josh Smith, who runs GasPos. Cash discounting in the fuel industry is not really anything like cash discounting in the retail restaurant. Totally different opportunity, but probably right now in our industry, it's actually one of the most urgent opportunities. There's a lot of urgency around it, and it's one of the most accepted opportunities, meaning gas station owners want this. They are very interested in it. And when one of the things that's really cool when Josh is talking about the way that they're helping these gas stations to finance this transition to EMV compliant pumps and the cash discount all in one. It's crazy. I mean, they're saving these gas station owners $50,000, $100,000 in cash flow, and eliminating the processing fees with what's inside the store and at the pump. It's really interesting. So I'll tell you to buckle up. This one we get pretty deep. This is a pretty deep interview. I'll get into a lot of nitty gritty details. I'm working with Josh Smith to come out with an edition of the Merchant Sales Insight really soon. And so we'll dive more into the detail there. But definitely, I love this interview. So I'm excited about that. And of course, today our podcast is sponsored by Valor Paytech, the leader in cash discounting, processor agnostic terminals, and virtual terminals. So definitely go check them out. ccsalespro.com/Valor, VALOR.
Welcome to the Merchant Sales Podcast.
All right, everybody. I'm here today with my good friend Josh, who is the CEO at GasPos. How you doing today, Josh?
Very well.
Awesome. So, of course, Josh Smith has been on the podcast in the past, and we've been talking about gas stations and all of that. And so what I thought would be really helpful is just to start out here, Josh, instead of your backstory, since we've already had that in the past, tell us the current state of payment processing at fuel stations. We had the EMV deadline, and we found all these kind of different things coming. Where are we at with fuel stations right now as far as payment processing?
Yeah, it's a fascinating time in the market. We're about a year past the EMV deadline for the dispensers. The major oil brands, so your Shell, Chevrons of the world, have reached 99% adoption, and that's kind of immaterial for our listeners today, or your listeners, I guess. I'm trying to conflate.
There are today, sure.
And the independent, kind of unbranded market is wide open. And there's some things that are happening that are really disadvantaging them. One of the major acquirers has implemented like a 65 basis point EMV not compliance fee. Yep. Chargebacks are going up. And these are customers that have ran, 10 years without a chargeback. And then all of a sudden, card fraud is happening. And, unfortunately, fraud flows like water. It's so... They're seeing chargebacks for the first time in a long time. And they're also switch fees are going up. Fiserv tripled their switch fee for Star on pre-auths. And normally that doesn't affect most retailers. Right. You don't need to guess how much money is in your checking account to see if you want to buy a hamburger or not. But every time someone swipes at the pump, and they also charge a round trip fee, so it's coming and going. They're getting them, and that's driving the cost of acquisition to basically double from an interchange perspective. And so it's a very interesting time. And in the independent market, they are wildly disadvantaged, because if I'm a Chevron and I sell 500,000 gallons of fuel a month, I can get the money, or Chevron will give me the money to make major equipment upgrades. Chevron wants their stores to have brand new everything, because it increases their brand, and all boats lift, kind of the rising tide thing. And on the other side, if I'm an independent marketer buying fuel off the spot price, there's no one to help me. It's so I may only sell 30 or 40,000 gallons of fuel, and I really make my money selling beer and specialty wines, and I may have a deli or a restaurant. And $100,000 expense is a huge outlay. And imagine trying to have to finance a condo over 3 years. Who's got $3,000-$4,000 a month to invest just in equipment? It's an interesting time.
So let's, you said a bunch of stuff there that I kind of want to dig into a little bit for our audience that maybe isn't as familiar. So first of all, let's talk EMV for just a second. So obviously we're talking about chip cards, and how a lot of the gas stations have not yet upgraded, the independents have not yet upgraded their pumps to be able to accept chip cards. The reason for that, I mean, the short answer is the cost. Am I right? Or is there other reasons driving that?
It's absolutely the cost.
Yeah, which is, can you give us some idea? I mean, if I'm an independent, I've got four pumps with two sides each. So I've got like 8 of these. What am I going to spend? I know it varies all over the place, but rough numbers. I mean, how expensive is this usually?
It's outrageously expensive. So 4 dispensers, I mean, you're looking at 80 grand. You're going to need a new point of sale system. That's another 20,000. You won't have most likely the communication lines. Gas pumps communicate at 4,800 baud, which is, anybody that ever used a modem in the early 90s, that's 4.8K. They need 56K to get the chip data down the lines. So that could be anywhere from several $1,000s for radio, like serial, like Wi-Fi, to another 100 grand if you have to bust up concrete. Even worse than that is if they bust concrete up or remove the dispensers, depending on which state they're in, they have to come up to compliance and everywhere else. And a lot of these stores were built 30 years ago. Right. And so there are some stores where they're literally looking at almost it's better just to shut it down or do something else. Like shut the gas station down. It's not even worth it. Yeah, absolutely. It's a huge problem. And on the other side, there are technical delays in there's not enough people to physically go do the work. Becoming a gas pump service company is incredibly hard. It's incredibly expensive. And you have to be very, very technically skilled in all kinds of different things, from plumbing to electricity to, so it's just a very complex market. All right. So basically, again, zooming out a little bit here, we have independent fuel stations, and there's like hundreds of thousands, or I don't know, there's tens of thousands. How many are there? There's lots. There's about 60,000 in the US. All right. So we have these 60,000 independent fuel stations. In order for them to become EMV compliant and accept these chip cards, it's not like a retail store where it's like, oh, upgrade your VX510 to this new Ingenico. No, you're literally ripping pumps out. You're busting up concrete in some cases. And I know we're going to talk about your solution in a minute, which allows them to avoid that. But that's the generally accepted way to do it. It's costing tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars to accomplish this. So as a result, they're not complying with the EMV kind of mandate. And then as a result of that, the fraud is increasing, and processors are charging these risk assessments and these additional fees because they're not EMV compliant. Maybe you could explain to our audience as kind of the really short version of like, why would fraud increase at a gas station that's not compliant with EMV? Why would fraudsters kind of be drawn to that? Yeah, absolutely. So when you're using mag stripes, if someone clones a card, one of the things that they want to purchase is they can't really go to Saks Fifth Avenue or Nordstrom's, and I think Nordstrom's went bankrupt, but anyways, they can't go like steal Gucci purses anymore. So what they'll do is they'll steal fuel. Fuel is a commodity. It's easy to sell. It's incredibly dangerous. They'll take a van, put a 300 gallon bladder tank in there and just fill it up as much as they can. And then they'll go sell it to someone on the black market and drop it off. And so and there's actually organized crime rings that do this. And it happened in Canada several years ago when they switched to EMV at the dispensers. And it actually took the Canadian market 4 years to achieve full compliance, and they only have 20,000 stores. We have almost 6 times that many here in the States. Wow. And so unfortunately, if I've got a bunch of clone credit cards, that's one of the few spots I can still use them.
Right, because then if you're using them there, because again, to clarify for those who maybe don't know, you can clone a credit card actually really easily if all you're talking about is just a mag stripe. What you can't clone as easily is the chip. And so if you went to a gas station where it was EMV compliant and you tried to use one of these cards, it would kick back and say, insert the card. Right. But in these cases, they're not EMV compliant. And so we have this kind of perfect storm happening. And so, now these fuel stations really do need to upgrade. They need a good solution, which we're going to talk about. So now let's shift gears because we're going to bring this narrative back together. And I want to talk about cash discounting. So obviously cash discounting, very different for fuel stations, meaning they're pretty familiar with this concept. That's been around for a while. So talk to us about the current state of cash discounting with fuel stations and maybe even the difference between kind of this pay at the pump versus in the store. So talk about that a little bit if you could.
Yeah. No, this is a super interesting and important topic. It's very important to bifurcate what happens with the fuel sales versus inside the store. The fuel sales are federally regulated. There's type testing, which is your state weights and measures. And what they want to make sure is that if someone pays $20, that they actually get $20 in product. And one of the regulations is around the receipts, where the receipt has to match perfectly what's on the dispensers. You don't want a nefarious actor to rip the consumers off. That's not good for anybody. And so why that matters for cash discounting in general is you couldn't just slap 30-cent in-kind discount on the bottom of a receipt and get away with it, because it's going to be out of balance with the dispensers. Also, the price per gallon at the pump is constantly changing. And so, they may change their prices 4 or 5 times a day if it's a very busy store, or there's lots of volatility in the market. So you have to manage that. And it's been done for decades. There's academic papers, in the late 80s, early 90s about the benefits of cash discounting for fuel. One of the things that happened in 2008, it became super popular because as the price of fuel was skyrocketing then, like it is now, they wanted to offer a discount because consumers became irrational about the price of gas. You'd hear stories of someone driving dozens of miles to save 2 or 3 cents a gallon. And so a cash discount that, as we know, people don't actually take advantage of very often. If you go 10 cents, 20 cents off on a cash discount, you can stick on Gas Buddy, hey, we're 20 cents less than the guy across the street, and attract people to your store, and then it kind of washes out. Right. So it's very important, but the main thing is to keep it in a compliant manner. And it's not compliance in the way we normally think about this, like, is it Visa compliance or Durbin compliance? No, it's like weights and measures compliance. And that's a different level of regulatory burden. Like, nobody wants to mess with the ag department. Like, it's just not a good look or something you want to have happen. And so in most fuel point of sale systems, this is a critical feature. We have customers, especially marinas, that may sell fuel at 6 different prices for the same product, or at a truck stop, they don't sell enough reefer. It's not cannabis, but fuel for refrigerated trucks. They don't sell enough of it to haul in diesel. It's like problematic. So what they do is they'll sell the truckers the same diesel fuel at 2 different prices. It's so because there's no federal excise tax on fuel that's not used over the road. And farmers get special rates, and nobody wants to rip off their local farmer. That's not cool. It's just very complex. And so you have to build in these discounts and fuel tiers is a fundamental part of the software itself. Then you go inside the store and it gets even more interesting. So you can't also just put up a sign that says everything has a cash discount, because you have lottery tickets. I've actually been racking my brain the last few hours, what's the estimated value or the EV of discounting lottery tickets. If you sold 6 times as many, you'd actually come out ahead if you did a 5% discount, because they only make a 5% commission. But I don't even know if that's legal. And I don't, consult an attorney before suggesting such as this. But no, you have to manage that. There are state laws around cigarettes. In the state of Arkansas, for instance, you can't sell them below a floor, and people would get in trouble because they would give a free lighter away with their pack of cigarettes, but the state would say, no, that discount drives below the limit, so you can't do it. So what we've done, and we spent the better part of 5 years building this out, is making a cash discounting program that takes all of this complexity and removes it, so that You can get cash discounts by the department or category, that you can hard code certain things out, that maybe they don't have the infrastructure at the fuel pump to support a cash discount. And the state says you've got to show both prices. So we separated the gas, and then we separated the departments, and we have a huge screen. It's about an 8-inch screen that is the customer display, and it actually shows the cash discount there. And it says, hey, you could get a cash discount, which is ultimately calculated for each individual sale based off the basket of goods.
And then you're saying, and that's pulling together maybe their fuel purchase and the things they bought inside the store, and there's kind of different cash discounting for these kind of different items, basically.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. Okay. So I love everything you've said so far. And I think it's interesting because like our audience at this point, everyone knows that you're an expert on this. They can just, it's like, you can always tell when somebody's talking about something they're passionate about that they're an expert on. So the other probably overwhelming sentiment from my audience is like, oh my word, I could never in a million years sell a fuel station based on what you just said, right? So let's talk about that. Let's dive into that. So I know what you do on the technology side. Again, I think we could simplify it in saying, you bring compliant cash discounting, meaning compliant with a lot of various things, to fuel stations, including what they sell inside and at the pump. But what about for the agent and the ISO that's driving by these independent fuel stations every day, looking over going, yep, that's that one that Josh was talking about on the podcast that I don't understand at all, right? How can they take advantage of this, and how does GasPos help them to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, we have spent years building this out. And I think a lot about how we do this is, how a local, economic development group will do it. Like oftentimes a city may go buy a plot of land, and they'll lay the foundation for businesses to come build a, technology park or an industrial park. Right. And that's how I see this. Like, we've built this to take the complexity away. And I have dozens of employees of mine that are either contractors or W-2 employees, and their entire job is to run a customer success program so that the agents and your listeners can go out and call on a store, tee up an opportunity, and all they have to do is get a conversation started, and I sell what you're good at, and then let me bring my guys in and handle the getting the dispensers put in, getting the point of sales put in, making sure that they have underground compliance and this compliance and all of this stuff, and take the benefit away from it, because I actually have an agent background. We started as a referral partner of an agent of a sub ISO of another ISO. So you can't. I remember having conversations with you back when it was like a little bit past that, but it was still like really early days, and you were getting into it and everything. It's pretty crazy when you look at that versus what you've built today in this company that is pretty almost it's like you're not a full service provider, but you guys are you've built something pretty cool. So thank you. It's been a wild ride. It's something that we're super passionate about. And I remember, and it was the fall of 2017. I called the president of an ISO at the time, and I was talking to him about deploying systems at no cost, and seeing if he wanted to fund it. And we were just 3 people in a garage, and I figured, hey, if this guy will fund putting the systems out there, we can split the money, and this will be amazing. Well, I love this. I love that you brought this up. It's perfect kind of segue, because I want to continue this conversation, but I want to talk about economics and financials, both for the fuel stations and for the agents and ISOs. Let's start with the fuel stations though. So at the top of this podcast episode, on this interview, we were talking about this kind of crazy tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands in cost for this independent fuel station to upgrade. Talk about what that looks like with the GasPos model, and give us a little more insight on how that works. Absolutely. So we have an equipment as a service model. We'll come in, we provide new fuel dispensers, we provide the hanging hardware, which are hoses and nozzles for the first year. Then we'll also provide the point of sale. We'll help fund other upgrades that may be needed if they're submersible pumps, which is what gets the fuel from the underground tanks to your car. If those are jacked up, if there's other problems, we'll come in and fix it. We actually have a pre-manufactured gas pump or gas station that's kind of cool, that you can drop off a trailer and stand up a gas station in 2 days instead of 9 months. But Now, basically, we remove the upfront barrier of the capital, and then we're a registered payment facilitator, moving even farther up the food chain rapidly. And so we can control the settlement, the billing, the authorizations, the whole 9 yards. And we just kind of control the whole ecosystem. And what makes it really amazing, especially for the agents, is these are 10-year-long agreements that have very sticky, if they don't pay us, it's like, okay, fine, we'll take your gas pumps. And like, that's not going to, the risk of churn is incredibly low. And, so it's a very good model. And for the stores, it's huge. They save the $100,000. If they can get financing, it's for 2 or 3 years. So they save a ton of money. We've got analysis, and I actually need to send this to you so you can put it up on the statement analysis tool. And but it saves about $15,000 a year net per store. And for someone that's doing about $750,000 to $1 million in sales, that's a lot of money.
Well, and of course, we not only they're doing $750,000 to $1 million in sales, but their margin on all of the fuel sales is like nothing. I mean, it's very, very minimal, right?
Yeah, absolutely. They operate on fuel at like less than 5% margins. Cigarettes is 5%, beers 10%. So yeah, like it's incredibly thin, and that gets kind of into the cash credit discounting side of it. And credit card fees are the second highest fees that are merchant fees that a store will pay behind their labor cost, and both of which are going up. Both because of inflation, and so. Isolating that, as a for instance, the industry does $600 billion a year in sales, pays almost $15 billion in merchant fees all in, and only profits about $10 billion. So it's a massive amount of money.
So that's insane. So I got to say that again. So you're saying that for the average independent fuel store, they pay more in merchant fees than they get in profits.
Absolutely.
That's insane. So basically, if you go in there and help them to effectively eliminate their processing fees, they could double their take-home profits at the end of the year, basically.
No, they absolutely can.
Wow, that's insane. Wow. Okay. All right. So I think that's a pretty good. I don't think we need to say much more about that. That's a good case for the fuel station. What about for the agent and the ISO? Obviously, there's a lot of moving parts here. You have financing, you have equipment options, different things like that. Your team's going to handle it. They're going to, like you said, lay the foundation, tee it up for you. And then your team comes in, does this big installation. What is the agent and the ISO generally like? What's the opportunity for them?
Yeah, absolutely. We split, we start off at 50%. And then if someone wants to go gangbusters, we have a plan that goes all the way up to 90%. There's no buy rate, there's no basis points. It's just, we're taking our hard costs. And that's kind of where the network effect is that we've got super low costs at this point, and we can spread the wealth out. And they're also using our credit facilities, the whole 9 yards. My employees, everything is at their disposal. And then we start at 50-50 splits and go up. It's so just kind of back in the envelope math. If you took a traditional cash credit discounting program, and we say, okay, like 400K in sales a year would qualify. That's like what, $8,000 that's there to split. But you're also locking in these retailers for 10 years. And I talk about the flexibility in the system. The gas stations are incredibly savvy. Their merchant costs are something that's at the top of their mind constantly. So one, it's a huge opportunity, and they're actually calling us and asking for it more and more. And helping us build it so where it's better for their consumers and there's less friction there. And so we're almost seen as conquering heroes a lot of times. That sounds kind of like an arrogant thing to say, but like they need help. And I have gas pump sales guys that will quit their jobs and have signed up and joined with us. We had a guy that sells fuel quit his job and sign up. It's like there are people that are in the industry are seeing what we're doing, and they're just running towards it. So there's one of the things we didn't really touch on as much earlier, but unlike retail and restaurant, where the idea of cash discounting is kind of this novelty and I'm not sure about that. I mean,
I would imagine there's like significantly less friction or pushback that you would get from a fuel station owner talking about, hey, this is something that's already happening at the pumps. Let us do it for you correctly. And why don't we just do it in the store as well? I mean, am I right there? Is that is a little bit of an easier pitch than it would be maybe for retail?
It absolutely is. And, if you can find someone that's doing cash discounting at their dispensers and they're unbranded, it's a home run. It's like, hey, you're already doing this. Like, why not just do it for beer and cigarettes too? And they have this aha moment where they're like, absolutely, let's roll. And then even if Love's and Pilot and the major truck stop, Travel Plaza companies, they all do it. And so you can point to a few exits down. It's like, hey, you see how they're doing this? Like, we can help you do this as well.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, so wow, it's such an interesting topic. And so I think for our audience, the big takeaway here is, rather than driving by that independent fuel station, even if you don't feel really confident or like the expert, you can go in, start the conversation, and then work with a company like yours to send some referrals over, which is going to result in, number one, really helping the merchant in two ways. In this case, number one is potentially eliminating a massive upfront cost, or at least spreading that out with, providing capital and things of that nature so that they can upgrade their equipment so that they are EMB compliant and they meet that criteria. And then secondly, implementing a system that's going to allow for the cash discount, which would eliminate, in this case, their second largest expense, an expense that's even larger than their profit, which is crazy to me, which is the merchant processing. I mean, is that kind of the big takeaway here?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, so I know a lot of people in our audience here are going to want to reach out. They're going to want to learn more about GasPos. So where would you send them to learn more about reselling with you guys?
Absolutely. You can come to our website. It's gaspos.co and click the menu button and you'll see Become a GasPos Partner. You can fill the form out there. You can also send emails to sales@gaspos.co. You can send them to HR@gaspos.co. It doesn't mean you got to be an employee. It's just a monitored inbox that we get and we track. And or feel free to call us. You can talk to my support guys and they'll answer the phone and help get you the right way. Or it's 866-7-GasPos. You can hit 1 for sales and you'll be able to talk to our salespeople that are there to help you. And again, like the main takeaway that I hope people hear is that we have laid the foundation for y'all's success. Like, we want to work with you. This is something like, normally people in the industry hate PayFacs because it's like Stripe or Square or Toast. And it's like, how many episodes are there? It's like, how do you sell against this payment facilitator?
Right.
And we're the exact opposite of that. Like we are here to be a benefit and offer a very unique service. And we can talk about the truck stops as well. That's a whole different ball game where there's $100,000 a year to make per truck stop. And they have very unique needs. And no, it's we want people to please call, and we want to help you, and we can tee you up for massive success.
And I want to say that website again, just gets a little bit different. So it's gaspos.co. Is that right? Okay, I want to make sure I got that right because I didn't want anybody, people to email whatever. So gaspos.co. Josh, thank you so much as always. Love your insights on this. I know that our audience is going to start to take notice of this. It's one of those verticals that's kind of like hanging out there. That's like low hanging fruit. It's really, really easy right now to go get. But we really are, I think it's interesting because it's one of those industries where there really is a little bit of lack of distribution in terms of sales. There's just not enough salespeople right now that are going after these independent stations to provide them with the help they need, which is a good thing because that means there's a lot of opportunity. So I appreciate the time, appreciate the insights, and always a pleasure having you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a pleasure. And thank you again.
Well, everybody, as we've said before, this podcast is brought to you by Valor Paytech. James, I was talking to Eric over at Valor the other day, and, I was trying to get a sense for how is this going? They are pretty much a fairly new player in this space. And, he was telling me they have scores of agents and ISOs working for them now. And, some of the places where they're selling is retail, deli, restaurants, even car dealerships, and... Yeah. I said to him, Eric, what's the overall, what's like the thing that brings people the most, Yeah. And he said, it's because it's so feature rich and it's, provides a large customizable feature set. That's really what sets them apart from the competition. It's each of these little features, and we've talked about them in the past, like Engage My Customer, the fact that it's cloud-based, which makes for fast downloads, being omni-channel, and most importantly, cash discounting.
Yeah. You know what's funny, Patty? I was going to bring up, I forgot about it till now. In our group, I think it was maybe 2 days ago, there was a post where somebody, just not like a paid, whatever, they were talking about Valor, and they showed a picture of one of their clients where I think it was a car that crashed into the store.
Oh my gosh.
It was crazy. And everything, I can't remember all the details, but anyway, bottom line is the terminal was fried. I mean, it was a disaster,
Right.
And he said something to the effect of, hey, my merchant was still able to batch thanks to Valor because the batch was in the cloud.
Because it was in the cloud.
Kind of giving a shout out. So if you're interested in learning more about Valor, if you haven't ever seen a demo, you really need to check it out. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's very cool.
Go to ccsalespro.com/Valor, VALOR. Make sure you check it out and get a demo.
And now, here is Questions from the Field with James Shepard.
So, Patty, today I want to talk about, kind of answering this question of when is it the right time to build a team? I had the opportunity to talk to a lot of experienced reps who
You talk a lot about this, with your clients, I know.
I do indeed, yes. And, the question is, when is it the right time to build a team, and even maybe some of the tips around kind of getting started with this. So I have started to really notice a pattern of really bad mistakes that people make in this area. The top mistake is starting a team in the first place. So I need to talk about that for a minute, because I will say for the vast majority of our listeners, if you are a individual successful merchant services agent and you want to start a team, please reach out to me first and let's take 10 minutes. I'll give it to you for free, just so I can build you a little spreadsheet and show you the math of what this looks like, because it's not good. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
You need to understand, you're going to give these reps some percentage of your residual. And what you're going to find is that in many cases, it's almost harder, and it almost takes more time to help an agent make a sale than it does for you to make a sale yourself.
Sure.
And so it's like you're putting in the same amount of work, massively more frustration in order to get a significantly smaller residual cut.
Right.
Now, that's not really a good thing to do. That's not a great idea. So I'm not, there is a time I've built several teams. I love building teams. I help people build teams all the time. I think it's a good thing, and I'll say when it's good. But the number one mistake is really make sure that you want to do it and that you have a path to making a lot of money at it. Okay. Right. Or maybe you just want to help people change their lives for the better and see a huge improvement in their financial well-being. Right. That's a great reason to start a team, but understand that it's going to take a really, really long time for it to make any financial sense for you in that context. Right.
Doesn't it also, in that context, it would seem to me, and we've talked about this before, rather than building a team of sales agents, maybe building a team of referral partners.
Building referral partners, building a team of telemarketers, building a team of cold callers. I used to have, at one point I had 3, kind of younger people starting out in their career that I was paying by the hour, and they would go out and just walk into businesses and do a little survey with them. And then depending on the results of that survey, they would recommend that person meet with me. And then they would schedule an appointment for me, face to face, and they would schedule a face to face.
Yeah.
Right. So the idea of, and it's interesting because you're kind of going right down the path I want to go down, which is the first step basically is this: build an infrastructure around yourself before you try to build a team. Okay. If you don't do that, you're going to end up doing a bunch of work that you don't want to do and that you really shouldn't be doing. Right. So what's going to happen here is, you're going to end up in a situation where all of a sudden you're doing paperwork and pricing, and you're doing, installing terminals, and you're doing this, and all of a sudden you're going to become like the $12 an hour support person for all these agents that you just hired. That's a really bad idea. Instead, go ahead and hire some people to do your appointment scheduling, to do your marketing activities, to do whatever, right? And to do your customer service, your tech support. And then what's going to happen is, when you get to a point where you say, wow, I have more leads than I can handle. And I have this team of people that's actually pretty well trained now, and they could handle more work. Now it's time to go ahead and start bringing on some salespeople. And
Yeah, sure.
Now you're going to bring in salespeople and you have all the leverage. You're not trying to recruit people and say, please come sell for me and just go cold call all day.
Right.
You're saying, look, I've got more leads than I can handle. I need somebody to help me follow up on those. Well,
Right.
a good salesperson that hears that is going to say, where do I sign? All I got to do is sell leads. Sure. Right. You give me a small residual split, give me some salary. I'm good to go. Okay. So number one is get a team of employees around you. And again, I say a team, this could be literally 2 people, right?
Right.
And they could both be part-time to start with, but start to get a team of people to do these other tasks that are going to become overwhelming if you bring on a team. Number 2, avoid my second, the second biggest mistake. And that is not 1099 contractors, please. Okay. You're starting a team. Listen, if you want to do a team of 1099 contractors, you better be able to recruit 100 of them.
Yeah. Sure.
Okay. The first 6 months or a year. If you can't do that, please do not waste your time.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Those
it's
of you
a
that are
headache.
listening,
I mean, a W-2 can be a headache, but the rewards are far better, right? I mean,
well, actually, both of them are kind of like equally a headache. The difference is that you can control the outcome a bit more with the W-2.
right.
The 1099s, the reason that those of you that are listening are like, James, how can you say this? You believe the 1099 is the end all. Yeah, I agree that for you, 1099 is the right thing. That's great. You want to own your residuals. You want to have all that, but I'm not talking about another you. I'm talking about a different kind of person. I'm talking about somebody who's not interested in becoming a world-class entrepreneur. I'm talking about somebody who wants to work a job that they enjoy. They want to have a good culture. They want to go home and spend time with their family, and they want to just make a solid income. Those people actually can tear it up in this industry because they just know how to work hard, and they go to work, they do their job, they come home, that's actually what you want. And so what you're going to find is you're going to get massively better results out of hiring 1 or 2 full-time salary plus commission W-2 salespeople, and then actually helping them to be successful by providing them with resources, leads, whatever, and training them and working with them. You're going to make so much more money there because you don't have to share in the residual as much. You're just going to pay a salary plus a small spiff. That's going to make you so much more money than bringing on 20 1099 reps where you got to give away what you really want, which is the residual.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, or more. And you're running around like a chicken with your head cut off for no reason. You can't really control them. You don't really know what they're going to say. And so now your brand is hung out to dry. So if you're wanting to start a team, get a team of employees around you to make you really productive and to give yourself, you got to have extra capacity. It's
that's
so
what
important.
I like is what you're saying. Give yourself that extra capacity.
Yeah.
And then once you have that capacity, the people who are sort of supporting you understand the business because you haven't had to take days out to train them because they've come to understand the business by working with you. That's what you're saying, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And, I think of it like, I think about our statement analysis company, ISOAMP, wow. I mean, that was a very expensive business for me to start. And one of the reasons is because I have consistently had probably 60% more labor available than what I needed as far as our statement analysts, Well, finally things have really started to heat up. In the last week we did, I think over 1,000, statements or something just in the last few days, and it's like, the fact that I had all these employees, everybody was still able to leave by, 5 o'clock and, we were good. And now we're like, okay, now I'm going to hire some more people. Cause if you're an entrepreneur, you're going to make things happen. You first have to have the excess capacity. You don't want to be training people when everything's under fire. Right. It's like, wow, we made 8 sales today and nobody knows how to key them in and nobody knows how to set the terminals up and nobody knows how to do anything. And now all of a sudden you're missing your kid's baseball game because you have to do all this stuff.
Yeah.
For what? You could have no employees and be making a ton of money. Why are you doing that? Like, take a step back, organize things first and say, well, right now some of you are listening, you're making $200,000 a year, $180,000 a year. You may have to make $140,000 this next year in order to pay these employees to come around you. Long term, it'll still be beneficial because you're actually going to make a lot more sales this next year because these people are going to help you after you get them trained. But then it's going to set you up either to grow personally and to make a lot more sales with not doing things you don't want to do. And it's also going to set you up to where if you wanted to bring on 2 or 3 salespeople full time, then you could bring all these 2 or 3 people that you trained on the operational side, you could bring them in full time.
Right.
And now you're off and running. So, so I think, when the right time is to start a team is when, number one, you know what you're doing, you have a good cash flow coming in, and you've built a good infrastructure around yourself that has some additional scale to it where you could be able to bring some people in. And then next is don't do it until you can afford to take the risk of hiring the employees.
Yeah.
Got to hire the employees. I will say if you go to ccsalespro.com, our main website, ccsalespro.com, right at the top there, I think you might have to scroll over one, but I got that slider at the top. One of the ebooks there is how to build a merchant services sales team.
Yeah, I saw that, right?
It's a free ebook, but I would really recommend going through that. It'll be very helpful to you and kind of flesh this idea out. But I'd really challenge you, those of you that are like, oh, I really want to start a team. Look, I get it. You're tired of cold calling. You've been doing it for years. You're trying to figure out what's next. You want to have more purpose. I think that's fantastic, right? All of those things are considerations, but don't jump the gun and make your life miserable for no reason.
I mean, and I know you've talked about this in the past where people think, hey, I'm doing great. I'm going to bring somebody in and I'm going to do even better. And, it just doesn't work that way. And as much as you want to bring in more business, you have to be patient, right?
Be patient, and you have to be focused on what matters. You have to build a foundation. You can't build a house before you have a foundation. Right. And so you have to have that foundation built. And a good entrepreneur can build a solid foundation like that in 90 days. Go out there and hire a couple of people and start training them, maybe even people that and that you already trust. Bring them in, get them trained on the industry, have them work with you, spend an enormous amount of time training and communicating. And then you'll have that base in 90 days. And then go out there and find that sales rep and hire him as a W-2 employee, bring him in, pay him $35,000 a year plus, a 15% residual override, contingent upon employment. You can do that like that. And then you are making a lot of money on that. Like if that person is successful, that's good. And because you're paying them a salary, you can kind of control what they're doing, how much they're working, all of those things. And so again, definitely check out the ebook. There's a lot more to it, a lot of tips there for free, but I really think this is something that agents need to be a little more careful when they're considering starting a team and make sure they do it right.
Good stuff, James. Thanks.
This is the Insider's Report with Patty Murphy.
Well, James, we can add Apple now to the list of companies making it easier for merchants to accept tap-and-go payments.
Right.
Right. The company that brought us, the iPhone and the iWatch, et cetera, now plans to allow merchants to use their iPhones to accept contactless payments.
Right.
And this isn't brand new. I think we've talked about this before. In fact, I kind of like this image, of the idea of phone-to-phone payments, right? We've talked about that with regards to MasterCard and Visa. At checkout, the merchant prompts the customer to hold their Apple Pay-enabled iPhone or their contactless credit or debit card or some other digital wallet near the merchant's iPhone, and the payment gets securely completed using NFC technology. Visa and MasterCard have each introduced similar capabilities, as we've discussed, for merchants using Android devices. And just to kind of confuse us all, this is one of the things that kind of blows my mind. Visa calls its product Tap to Phone. Okay. MasterCard calls its product Tap on Phone. Okay. And now we have from Apple Tap to Pay.
Okay, got it.
So tap to phone, tap on phone, tap to pay.
Now, one thing right at the beginning here that maybe you can clarify for me from your research. I don't know.
Sure.
I'm still a little bit behind the eight ball on this particular topic. I read like one article about it and then I didn't really dive much deeper. So is Apple, providing payment processing services to merchants, meaning like you tap on the phone and like then Apple gets that money into the merchant's account in some way? Or is this just a technology that Apple now has on the iPhone that NMI can integrate with? And you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's the technology.
That's what I thought.
That's my understanding. It's an app, that you can add to your phone. Mm-hmm. And it basically NFC, it'll go to whoever the processor would be normally.
All right, but it's more like a really fancy gateway, pretty much, that Apple built for their phone that allows this capability. But then that gateway still needs to be attached to some kind of a traditional merchant account.
Right, you still have to get yourself a merchant account with somebody.
That's kind of what I thought when I was reading it, because it looked like some of the integrations they had done with different companies. And so, to me, I was like, when I saw it, I was kind of like, what's all the buzz? I mean, I get it. It is a really cool technology, but I feel like our industry, the it was weird when I was seeing what people were saying about it in our industry. They seemed very fearful of it, of, Apple trying to compete with us. And then when I read the news article, I'm like, I don't get it. I don't see the competition here.
I don't see the competition either.
This is a fancy dongle. It's not, you don't have to have a dongle on the phone anymore.
Don't need a dongle on the phone anymore is really what it boils down to.
Sure. And of course I can see a future threat, if maybe Apple eventually wants to say, hey, you don't need a merchant account. We will provide that to you. So I see that.
I mean, right now they're working with Stripe.
Okay.
That's the first platform that's going to offer this tap to pay.
Now that's interesting. That's a competitive threat for sure.
That I think is a competitive threat, and it's going to be using it with the clients it has on what is it called? Shopify, I believe.
Shopify, yep.
You're right. Sure. Used a lot for these pop-up stores and farmers markets, right?
Yes.
But it says it wants to work with other payment platforms and app developers to make this widely available. So, watch the space. I think it could be really interesting, particularly if it's going to partner with folks like Stripe.
Yeah. Well, and again, to me, it's like, okay, if I'm an agent or ISO looking at this, and it's like the big takeaway is, 12 to 24 months from now, you probably will never again need to sell a dongle that would go on the phone. The phone is the dongle now. And so that's unnecessary.
Right. I mean, because, MasterCard already partnered with NMI and Global, for its tap on phone. Right.
Right.
Visa, I think, is working. I believe Visa's working with Fiserv.
Okay.
For its Tap 2 phone. So, I think, and what I've heard from MasterCard and Visa is this has really taken off in a lot of other markets, particularly developing markets.
Yeah.
Like Asia.
I could see that. Sure.
Right? Where there's lots of phones, not enough terminalization.
I mean, one other little interesting observation I had about it is I think that in these emerging markets, especially, I think Apple is in a unique position to dramatically reduce the risk of payment processing with this.
Mm-hmm.
There's just so much more data involved in here's this phone that's connected via biometrics to my card, and they know it's me. And so all of a sudden I could definitely see, where our industry has kind of maybe shied away from some of these markets around the world. Where now that would be interesting. And even for some of your higher risk, I think it'll be interesting to see how even in the cannabis industry and things like that, as they move forward, where I could see eventually it being we can take these kind of payments only because there's a biometric scan. We know that this person is of the correct age or whatever. So I don't know. I really think it's an interesting play. I actually really like it. I think Apple is very smart to do it this way.
I think so too. Yeah.
As a user of Apple phones and products, I'm really excited about it. I think it's going to be fantastic because I already have started to move away from my wallet. I still carry my wallet. Usually I forget it sometimes now, but I still carry it. I really hope that 12 months from now, I never need to put a wallet in my pants again, ever. Because, on my phone, I want to have everything on there. I rarely carry cash anyway. So I think this kind of fits into that whole narrative of kind of okay, all of this data is on the phone. For people that are concerned about privacy, this is the Antichrist, here.
Right.
It's this is really bad. You know what I mean? But but for somebody like me, I'm like, hey, I want the convenience. I get it. I like it. This is great. And so I think it'll be very interesting to see how it plays out.
I think it's going to be really interesting. I think this ties in with what we talked about micro merchants in the past, right?
Right. Exactly.
I have a lot of friends that are out there, selling, at farmers markets and concerts and things like that. And it's always a hassle for them,
Yeah.
Can you Venmo me the money? Can you this me the money? I can't find my dongle to put on my phone. The idea that they can just tap to another person's phone, it incentivizes them to be real merchants, I believe.
Yeah. Yep. Love it. Good stuff, Patty. We'll definitely keep us up to date on this one.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you for listening to the Merchant Sales Podcast. Whether you are an industry veteran, processing executive, or just trying to learn about the payment space, we appreciate your time. The Merchant Sales Podcast is a joint production of Greensheet.com and ccsalespro.com, and we hope you will tune in next week for more information and tips on building your merchant services business.